Again, the premise of the show, for those who've never seen it before, is that we try to answer questions that customers have, or potential customers, or even anyone, basically. We don't screen them by customer, but anyone who has a question as to using propane, natural gas, or gasoline, or all three. And if we have the answer, we'll give it to you. We have 25 years of experience, and this is all we do is carburation. So I'd like to start off with debunking the junk. As you know, we have a segment called Debunk the Junk, and we've received so many calls about having to hold the primer button in on the regulator to keep the engine running. There's a little primer button on the back, and they say, if I hold it in, it keeps running. And our first question always is, my question is, why is that thing so high? Can I get it down a little bit? Nope. All right. Anyway, question is, what fuel are you using? Well, if you're using propane, it's almost always going to be a cylinder issue. The propane cylinder has not been purged correctly. All right. And we have had customers in the past that will just not accept that fact. They say, hey, it works on my grill, and we'll send out a replacement regulator under warranty if the regulator is bad. But customers pay shipping when we find out, of course, they're not bad, because these things are basically bulletproof. They've been made for 50, 60 years, and they just work. And they're bench tested, flow tested before they leave the factory. And so we can't stress hard enough, please make sure you're using a cylinder that has been filled multiple times. We had the chart. I don't have it with me right now, but the first time a cylinder is purged, it still has 50% air that will come out when you hook up to the cylinder. Just think of that, half of what's coming out. If you open the valve here, half of what's coming out is air. And people will say, oh, I seen them with the purge valve open on the side of the, here, I think I have one here on my little toy shelf. Let me find it over here. Don't you love when you got a blank screen like that? Oh, here it is. All right. See right here? People say, I've seen them, they open this thing right here with a screwdriver and you know. And what a lot of techs will do, or a lot of filling stations will do, is they will bleed the air down, you know, open this, do something. All right. Now there's no pressure in the tank. And then they'll hook up and start filling it. And then from this spot, because there's a tiny hole right here, you'll see gas start to go pss, 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 and then pss, it'll come shooting out. Oh, it's full, all right? What is actually coming out of that little port is this right here. This little plastic tube, you see it? And what that is nothing but an 80% liquid level tube. When liquid gets up to that 80% mark, it gets that tube, it starts to come out, what we always call a spit valve when it starts to spit. You cannot purge a tank with a spit valve. You cannot, I like that. You cannot spit at a tank with a purge valve, no. You cannot purge a tank with a spit valve. So it has to be purged correctly. Now, an interesting thing about regulators, I thought we'd talk about my favorite one, and I'm gonna come close for this. I'll bring my other chair over. I made this regulator a couple years ago, all right? Now, isn't that interesting? It's the same as this. You know, it had the back on it originally, right? But took it, cut the back out of it. You'll see that. Actually, I can touch the dagger fraggle. See? So when you hit the primer button, you're actually pushing on that disc right there. See, it does. That's where you're pushing when you hit the primer button. And you see inside. You've never seen the side of a regulator. Isn't that cool? So that's what it looks like internally. And that's where the fuel comes in, right there. And that's where the fuel goes out the load block right there. Now, watch how simple it is. I'm going to show you the back side of the diaphragm. And here's the hose hookup that goes to the carburetor. Let me get that a little better. There you go. Now, get a good view of that. When I draw on this, and you got to imagine you got a straw and a glass of milk, and you're going to go, that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to go, watch what happens. See how easy it moves? I know, Dr. Hughes smoking a regulator. It's pretty cool. Well, watch the front side. See that? So that's how they work. When the engine, the velocity through the carburetor is transmitted to this fitting, it goes into the diaphragm area, and that area becomes negative pressure, and the backside is atmosphere. That's why it's wide open. And so when it's below atmosphere, I'm going to do it really hard now. See that? That's how it functions. And it's funny, these actually pulse because the engine is turning on and off so many times per minute. So now another thing we wanted to show is how you could check the inlet pressure. So right here is where the fuel comes in. This is a natural, this is a inherently designed shutoff device. So if you blow into this, see, nothing comes out. Here's my mic down here. See, nothing comes out. I'm blowing pretty good. Now, to prove that, I'm going to show you what a water manometer looks like. So here is a water manometer. See how it's set at 0? Now we can adjust that based on when you fill it, you adjust both sides, this particular manometer. But you can make your own. Let me get it back to 0. Sean had it set right, but all right. All right. Hey Sean, why don't you come hold that? I can't do it. Oh, I'm a doctor, not an octopus. All right. Now you got to watch the monitor too. It's kind of hard to do. You'll notice this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook. These have a little plug on the side. They come with, and you just put an adapter fitting there, a barb fitting. So you see the barb fitting there, and we hook the hose up to it. Now, this line runs from here to there, and if you'll notice, it comes in at the top. Now move up, Sean. See, as it goes to 0, all right? Because there's, right now, it's just atmospheric pressure. Now, watch as I start to apply what would be gas pressure. Boom! Ah, scared you. No. All right. So you'll see the one side goes down, one side goes up. This must look really weird. Does it look weird? Looks weird to me. It's like, if this had no audio, you'd think, what's this guy doing? All right. I can't do it now. All right. Oh, too much. All right, now you add the two together. So as I put pressure on it, Sean, you tell them. See, 1 inch, 2 inch, ready?
2, 4 inches, 6 inches. Oh, almost 8.
All right. That would be natural gas, or even propane could be 8 inches water column. So you see how that works. That's inches of water column. And so that's how these operate. Now, I'll take it from here. What happens is the reason we use water manometers is because they're not mechanical. And so a mechanical one, they're very delicate and very expensive. So imagine if you hooked the wrong pressure up to this, like 5 psi. You know what would happen? Yep. Blow all your water out. See? No more water. And so that's how you check the pressure on your inlet to your regulator to make sure. Now, I wanted to show you too how you can make your own. Did I show this before? I think I showed this before. You can make something as simple as that. You can just take, and you don't even have to have a picture of a ruler, we did, but you can just take inches. So you do like this be 0 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, both ways. And have one end open, the other end you would then hook to your regulator, see? And then you too now have a manometer. And so a lot of people are familiar with water levels. They use the same principle. So that's how that works. So anyway, that's a word about how the regulators work. And please, please, don't use a cylinder. That's the wrong chair. Don't use a cylinder that you know for sure has not been purged correctly. And it takes 5 fillings to purge them correctly, or 5 proper purgings to purge a cylinder correctly. And we have that graph somewhere, and if you need it, just email us. We'll send it to you. I'm glad to do that. What is left in a cylinder when you purge it. Okay, so that's debunking the junk. Yes, you cannot use a brand new cylinder. Now, a word about generators. Oh, hey, now you didn't tell me that was coming. All right, you see that? First purging, 50% of the air remains. Now this purging here, I don't have the booklet in front of me, but I believe it was 30 or 35 PSI of vapor pressure put in the cylinder and then safely burned off. Or if you're out in an open field in the middle of nowhere, and you can safely bleed it off, but typically you burn it off. So you pump it up, not pump it up, but you use the vapor propane to bring up the pressure in the cylinder to 30 pounds, let's say, and then burn it off down to 0. You bring fresh propane vapor pressure back up to 30, blow it off again. 30, blow off again. And so after 5 times, wherever that chart went, you'll see it was way down. The 5th purging, you're at like 86%. So, once you get past the 4th, you're doing really well. So, and you'll see the difference. The load block will change. You'll need to calibrate it a little better when that happens. But so if you're holding the primer in, most likely that's the issue. On natural gas, it typically is the wrong gas size line. Wrong size gas line. Isn't that funny? So we've had picture after picture where, because we asked for a copy of fuel in, fuel out, and what that means is we want to see where we'll end up seeing this somewhere along the line. A fitting has been installed that causes a restriction. And the worst, hey, do I have a ball valve here? One of the worst things for us to see is a customer with a ball valve that, once you get this, that we don't recognize. It's great to put a shutoff valve on the system, but you need to make sure it's a full ported gas valve, especially, and I say this, especially if it's far away from the generator. In other words, customers will put a ball valve at the meter and run a 25-foot gas line to their generator. And when they're done, they'll turn off the ball valve, pull the quick disconnect valve. Ones that aren't will look a lot like this. They won't look shut off like that, but internally they're really small. They'll be, So if you go to buy a ball valve for natural gas, look for these, full flow. And because that causes a restriction in the line, way down the line. So if if that 3/4 inch ball valve has a 3/8 orifice ball in it, all right, the line becomes 3/8. Only thing it will do is the line, if it's bigger after that, will store additional gas until you start using it. And then it just becomes whatever size that orifice is in that ball valve. So, very important. All right, a word about generator safety. Heard just this morning, my wife shared with me that someone passed away from carbon monoxide running a generator inside a home. Please, can't stress enough, never run any generator inside a building. But when it comes to a gasoline generator, that is just very, very sad. Let's see, anything else about generator safety you wanted to promote? Nope. No, okay. Any questions that we have? Do we have any, I don't have any questions on my clipboard.
No, we got some questions.
Okay.
You may want to just make an announcement. I think some people have.
Are you on the blue ball?
No.
Okay.
Some people have. Some people have good audio but bad video due to the internet. I think it's clearing up maybe here.
Okay.
But, anyway, we're going to go to YouTube. We had a question on YouTube. The question on YouTube was, how do you adjust for the best fuel-air mixture?
Okay. So for those who couldn't hear, first what Brian was saying was we're having an audio, video issues at times. The internet right now is having issues. That's why we're slow getting on the air. But the question came from YouTube about how do you get the best air fuel mixture setting. On all our systems, they come with a load block. And see, what the load block is, I don't like calling it a load block. It has always been called a load block, so we still call it a load block, but I call it a calibrator. This device here calibrates this regulator, zero governor, not truly a regulator, zero governor to the engine that it's on, the size engine that it's on. It also calibrates it to the atmospheric pressure, depending on elevation, and the BTU content of the fuel. So it is a calibrator, calibrates all those things. And so what you want to do with this screw is adjust it once you have the generator up and running, put a load on it, and then start dialing this in towards the lean side. And if you have the tachometer that we provide, you'll see the RPMs. Well, the first thing you look for with the tachometer is always look for the highest RPM. So you'll dial it in, dial it out, you'll see it jump around, and you'll finally notice that it'll never go over a certain amount, like 3620 or 3660. That's a very common numbers. Some 4660. Once you know that number, now your goal is to dial this in as lean as possible and still keep that RPM, okay? Because the governor is always going to try to open to give more fuel. That's all it can do. A governor can do nothing but add fuel. It can't take fuel away. Should I say that? Let me make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, a governor doesn't add fuel. It can only open or close the throttle. And I'm talking about a mechanical governor. I know there's other types of methods, but with a mechanical governor, that's why when you turn off an engine, when you flip the switch off on a generator, you'll notice the throttle will just go wide open, because it's just trying to get more fuel by opening the throttle more and more and more and more. So when you're leaning this out, the throttle will keep trying to open. It'll keep trying to open. Finally gets to a point where opening it more does no good. And so that's the leanest you can be at full power. So your goal is highest RPM, under load, at full power. And so you can be a little more rich than that, that's fine, but to be on the rich side of it is going to make it run a little warmer, and it's going to use more fuel and not be as efficient, of course. So with propane, natural gas, lean is efficient, cool, and clean. So try to keep it lean. Now, our instruction booklets talk about 5 turns, 7 turns. We can't stress enough, and we tried to write this in our manuals. Those are just, we had to find a number. So, you know, you play around the shop, you go, okay, it seems like 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there will normally get a machine started. That is not a magical number. We get a lot of calls where whoever's doing the machine wants to know that number. How many turns exactly? 6.5? Or it's not like that. The idea is just to get in the zone. Once you're in the zone, then you can adjust based on, let's say, RPM. If you have Hertz, and I'm not talking about, you know, pain in the back like I have right now. I'm talking about HERTZ, 60 Hertz cycles. If you can watch, if you have a meter to watch that, that's the best. And hey, Sean, how about grab me one of those? We just got it. It's on my work center. That Hertz meter. You know, there is a cool little device, and we're going to be demonstrating it here shortly. Cheap. Can't believe how inexpensive they are, but of course they're from the Big C, and awesome device for checking the Hertz of your generator. So if you can, you know, if you look for 60 Hertz, and again, we had that question too. Is it okay to be below 60? A lot of equipment has no problem with that. I had a printer one time. And I still remember the number. Hey, get off there. It's probably backwards on this thing, isn't it? But it said 110 to 127 volts, 50 to 60 Hertz, 11 amps. So that printer, it was a laser printer, could handle anywhere from 110 to 127 volts, 50 to 60 Hertz. So some equipment is designed to accept that. Some equipment is not. So, but typically you're looking for 60 Hertz at 120 volts. But anyway, any other questions? Sean's running off to find that Hertz meter.
Yep.
0 power on natural gas. However, I've also seen machines that have lost nearly 20% power on natural gas. It depends on the machine. If it's a high quality machine, you should lose virtually little if no power on natural gas. We had a, man, I don't remember if it's the Generac 15K or 17.5. We have a video on it. I keep talking about it, we never dig it up, but I'm almost positive we had full power on that thing on natural gas. And so with the snorkel, you're going to get the most power possible on natural gas. Let me say that. With adapters, you're adding a second venturi to the airstream, which has an effect on airflow and that kind of thing. If you drill and dedicate the carburetor, you'll have a better chance of full power on natural gas. But you can't, my point is you can't go by the exact numbers. Oh, natural gas, and in one of my books, I equated it as like 86,000 BTU per gallon if you could do that with natural gas compared to 92,000 BTU on propane, 110,000 BTU per gallon on gasoline. You would think, you know, all right, this one's 10% less, that one's 20% less, you're automatically going to get that much less power. That is not accurate. Has a lot to do with the governor, has a lot to do with we've had some that got more power out of natural than gasoline because the gasoline jets were so dirty. So and that's the other thing about alternative fuel like natural gas is on gasoline you can start losing power as you go along because gasoline is going to start having an effect on its performance on the carburetor. And if you look at the emission sticker, I think the one we looked at the other day said 150 hours, and it's no longer in compliance. So, so there is no hard and fast rule about loss of power on natural gas, but I guess the basic rule of thumb is the better quality engine, the better chance of getting nearly, if not full power out of natural gas. Now, I want to go back to, I hope that answered that. Here's a little device. If you look for it on the internet, you'll find it. It's a, oh man, you didn't bring the ring. This one's missing the ring. Need one with the ring. We'll come back to that. All right, you got another question?
This is more of a comment. It says, I installed your dedicated kit on a 420cc generator last week, and it's just awesome. I've run it on my 1,000-gallon propane tank and my natural gas line. Moving between the fuels is easy with the load block. I'm never using gasoline again.
All right, Jim. Great to hear. Yeah, that's why. Thank you, Sean. Years ago, I used to try to convince customers, please just dedicate, and they wouldn't do it. They want to go with the tri-fuel. And anyone who has used these, has used propane natural gas, hardly anybody ever wants to use gasoline again. It's you take even the like the little 2000s, you know, say like the Yamaha, Honda Predators. They hold just, I don't know if they hold a gallon of gas. Do you know, Brian, how much gasoline that thing held?
Predator?
Yeah.
It's right at a gallon. It's either right below or just above.
Yeah, so it's 7 more pounds you got to pick up and carry around. So it's not as heavy, but you know, a properly filled grill bottle at 4.7 gallons, you're going to get 4 times the run out of it. You're not going to have the choking stench, just like when we break all ours in for an hour or two on gasoline before we convert them or add the motor snorkel. And even outside, it's like you can't stand them. The gasoline smell is horrible. So yeah, good to hear that, Jim. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Let me just run back to this device I was talking about earlier. This is I wish I could show you a live version. We're going to have it on our load bank. That's why I got these. It's a volt and Hertz meter. No, this is an amp meter. Wait a minute, does this do Hertz? I don't remember which one it is. No, I think this one does amps. Oh well. Man, I don't remember now. The old doc's losing it, dude. I'm telling you, hurricane season is really tough on us. But what you do with these is on your line, one of your AC lines, you just slip it through there, and it'll give you amps, hertz, and of course then you also hook the backside and you can get volts, and so you can get the digital readout. I believe we got these that do Hertz because that's what I really wanted was Hertz, and and they're not that expensive, $20, something like that. Very nice device. So anyway, that's how easy. If you didn't know how that worked, you'll see amp probes where you clip over top of a wire and you get the amp readout, the Hertz readout. But once you slip that little ring over that one of the wires, one of the L1, L2 wires, you get that reading all the time. And there's nothing like getting feedback from your generator. Good feedback, that is. All right. What do we have?
Okay, we've got another comment from Isabella says, please list your top 3 picks for generators under 500, under 1,000, and under 2,500. So maybe you just want to talk about how to choose a generator instead of the price range there.
All right, Isabella. Boy, see, that always a piece of information missing. What size generator are you looking for? Are you looking for the largest generator? $1,500. So it's like, what? Whereas you can get down, my in-laws, when they were alive, they ran 2 full-size refrigerators and a full-size freezer, and these were newer units. So 2 full-size refrigerators, a full-size chest freezer. They would use a microwave, coffee pot, whatever. And I gave them a 3,500 watt generator. And that's all they had. And never had a problem. So yeah, you can run 3 refrigerators off of a 3,500 watt generator. Got to be careful about the charts. The charts are can be very, very misleading as to what size generator you need. But yeah, the number one thing is figure out what do you really need to power up. In other words, especially like you're talking about winter or summer. I mean, do you think you're mostly going to use a generator in the winter or most likely in the summer? If it's most likely in the summer, why would you want to power up a 5-ton AC central air unit? I mean, that's going to eat up, 40, 50 amps of power. Whereas you could have a window unit in one room. So you pick a room, you have a window unit, and they have these nice little ones. We've had several of them that are they roll around and they have like a little dryer vent. Stick them in the window, shut the window down, and like this thick, and so you can even lock the window for security, and cool one room. And that's the one you hang out in, you sleep in, instead of doing the whole house. So there's things like that to think about. And when it comes to heat, why fire up a 10 kW generator to power up a 10 kW heating coil in a furnace to provide heat when you could be using propane or natural gas that you're using to power the generator for a space heater? And then of course you can get nice looking log sets. So if you're in an area that gets cold, some people opt to get a real pretty like corner log set, mantle setup. It's unvented propane, natural gas. And so you don't need any power for that unless you want to run the little blower in it. And so then you can have a little generator for that. So there's ways of thinking around just, powering the exact everything you have. Maybe little options you can do. Can I have some water? So no Isabella yet?
She said 6,000 watts.
6,000 watts for under 500. Wow.
She responded.
Cool. So under $500, Isabella. Sorry, I guess that's not going to happen. Predator. I said it on we did the Predator 2000 recently, and I have no association, affiliation with Harbor Freight, other than I really like their gloves. But Harbor Freight motors are the best quality Chinese-made units I've seen, and I really have a lot of respect for that. The quality of the motor, well built. Run nice. The parts aren't like some. We've had the Chinese copies, like I said, Chandas and Chamahas, that just have. They're just horribly designed, and you can't even get them to run half the time on anything, even on gasoline sometimes. So your best bet, if you're looking for economy and a decent quality, I would go with the Harbor Freight Predators, and from there pick the one you want. If you can get the inverter, great. You know, they're quieter, as you know, and they throttle up and down based on load. Because as you know, an AC generator needs 3,600 RPM to generate 60 Hertz. And that's whether you have a light bulb or you have an electric heater. Still has to turn the same speed in order to generate the 60 Hertz it needs. So inverters do not require that process. They'll ramp up based on need. So they save fuel and they're quieter. So that'd be my suggestion for your question.
All right. Let's go to Herb.
Herb. Hey, Herb. Hey, Herb.
Herb purchased our US Carb system, the motor snorkel, for his Generac 7500, and he had an electrician, let's see, an electrician ran a hose from the regulator to the quick disconnect close to his gas meter. Now Herb wants to know if he wants to switch to propane, what accessories does he need? And maybe repeat the question, so the question is, what accessories do you need to switch to propane if you're running on natural gas?
Does Sean want to go for a ride?
Reg.
Oh, it's over here. Okay, I got it right here. All right, you can take, you said he had a quick disconnect, right?
Yes.
All right. So, all right, Herb. Need my burp button. All right, you got me back on? All right. So, what you should have at the meter is a shutoff valve. So this would be off, of course. Inline is always on. So you would have your natural gas turned off, and you would have your quick disconnect, and you would pop it loose. All right. So now this stays on the meter. Now you have your quick disconnect plug on your hose that's on your generator. Now what are you going to do with it? Well, what you do is you have a regulator, upside down like this. So just tag on. All right. This goes into the cylinder valve on like a 20-pound cylinder. Okay. We would have what's called a Reg NPSK-34, and that would now include a regulator. In your package would come a regulator with the appropriate fittings to go to this 3/4 inch quick disconnect. Reg-NPSK-34 on propane. Thank you for your question. Appreciate that. Was that Herb?
It was.
Thank you, Herb. Hey, Herb.
Okay, we've got another one here. This is from Jay Mersman. Is it safe to use an auto changeover regulator and basically never cut off your Jenny?
The answer is yes.
Okay, next question.
Ha! That's funny. Yeah, the auto changeover, as you know, when has two cylinders tied together, when one goes empty, you can disconnect it automatically switches to the cylinder with the gas. You can disconnect the empty one. If you have another full one on hand, you just screw it back on, turn it on. Now it's ready to go next time. But yes, they're designed to unhook live. That's the whole point of a changeover regulator like that. It's meant to switch over live. And now as for never shutting off your generator, that's an interesting thought, but you got to check and change the oil once in a while. But I left mine, man, I can't remember the number now. I'll have to look that up. I think it was 146 hours. I had a 6300 Yamaha, and we had a Duratio, and I had to go to Charleston for something, and I just waved the thing goodbye and came back, and it was still just purring along. But that was on a 1,000-gallon tank. But yes, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Okay, next question. This This question comes from another industry member.
Industry,
This is,
man.
this is Clayton. And Clayton says, of course, we understand why lean and clean is the best. Expound to viewers why a lean mixture on alternative fuels is not as harmful as it might be with gasoline, discussing temperature. So I guess he means it's harmful to the engine.
Yes. So explain why it's the laws of physics with alternative fuels. Lean is cooler and cleaner. It's kind of like the blowtorch effect. If you add, if you're too rich on alternative fuels, propane and gasoline, natural gas, it increases the air fuel mixture. You get that basically blowtorch effect, like you would on a cutting torch. On gasoline, when you go rich, when you're rich on gasoline, it's beyond vaporization, so you're drawing liquid into the combustion chamber, and the liquid acts as a cooling agent. So that's why on gasoline, rich runs cooler. So it's just as simple as that. And we have to do the video on that. We had it at one time, we lost it, but we had all the equipment set up, and we showed how running lean with the heat gun. We had a digital heat checker. As you richened it, it got hotter and hotter, and when you leaned it, it was cooler and cooler. Where it's opposite on gasoline. It's just laws of physics. I don't know how to explain it any more magically than that. It's a law of physics. All
right, let's move on.
Yes.
This question is from YouTube.
Hello, YouTube.
This is from NG-Gen. NG-Gen says, that's a suspicious name. Okay, so can a 3/8 inch quick disconnect with a 10-foot hose power a 4,400 watt generator?
On what fuel? Can I suspect it's a natural gas generator? NG-Gen? So can a 3/8, so that makes me wonder if they're asking, can a gas grill hookup kit can be used. And those are usually 12 feet if I'm not mistaken. They might be 10. Usually like a green hose, 3/8. They come with quick disconnects. They're meant to hook up a barbecue grill. Barbecue grill is typically 50,000 BTU, which is like a 5-horse engine. Now they're asking about a 4,400 watt, is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah. So if that's 4,400, we can assume it's 8 horse. You're right at the ball. You're right at the edge. But my personal opinion, I wouldn't have a bit of a problem trying it at all. I think you'll be all right as long as you don't have any other oddities involved, like a 1/4 inch fitting somewhere along the line. But our charts, that would be on our chart, wherever our charts are, but and they're online, but our charts are very conservative. And in 25 years, there was a time 25 years ago when all the work was done of figuring out, so be very careful with those. For one thing, they're not designed for engines. A cook stove will not vibrate. If it does, there's something really weird going on. Harmonics. An engine puts out a frequency, when it's running. There's actual harmonics going on. And it can literally cause a line to break because of the harmonics. That's why you want rubber for final connection, because of that. Matter of fact, I just rebuilt a Ford V6. Very interested to find out it had a balancer in the oil pan, because the V6 is not perfectly balanced. Like, you have the harmonic balancer on the front, but this had another balancer built inside, which, I'm not a car guy per se, but I thought that was really interesting, that it would help absorb the vibrations internally. But getting off the subject, corrugated lines are not supposed to be used for this type of hookup. And if you've ever used the black line for like off of a gutter, you run gutter into a 4-inch black corrugated pipe. You ever try pouring water into one of those to see it come out the other end? Takes forever. Because why? It hits every rib. Boom, 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 boom. So you get a lot of friction. Those corrugated pipes create a ton of friction. Same principle as a snake climbing the tree. So corrugated lines are not good. And you'll notice that, like, our instructions say a 1/2-inch line should be fine. You get a 1/2-inch corrugated line at a big box store, read the tag on it. It'll probably say 50,000 BTU, 60,000, which is 5 or 6 horsepower engine. So don't expect it to run a 12 horse. You'll be very disappointed. And again, the shutoff valve that comes with them, a lot of those are ported. They're half the size of the line. So all good stuff to keep in mind.
All right. Okay, another question. This question comes from Bob via Facebook. Bob says, I retrofitted my gas generator to natural gas. When I first did, it ran great. Since Hurricane Harvey, I got it out and finally got it started, but I couldn't get more than 700 RPMs. But on gasoline, I get 7,500 RPMs. How do I get more RPMs on natural gas?
700 and 7,500? 7,500 RPM?
That's what he says.
Wow. Well, I know, that is, maybe there are units that turn that fast. That is fast. All right. First thing I always ask, which is a life question. This is for anything in life. What has changed since it was good? And you can ask that question about a lot of things, I'm glad my wife ain't around. She'll get mad if she hears, It's like she used to she made this chicken once. It was like, awesome. Oh, so awesome. I loved it. As a matter of fact, the next day I wanted it for lunch. It was so good. And then she made it again. It was like, oh, she made it again. She's so sweet. Horrible. It's like, what happened? Nothing. I used chicken. Did the same, didn't do anything. I said, something changed. Well, the recipe called for white meat, breast, and she used thighs the first time because she didn't have any white meat. And when she made it again, she had white meat, so she used it and followed the recipe, and it was still thinking about how nasty it was, but it's amazing how good it was with the bread. So what happened since it was tasting good? Change type of meat. So my question to you, sir, would be, what has changed? Something has changed. Either a fitting went bad, there could be a problem with the natural gas meters. Everything else in the house, on natural gas working correctly. It was natural gas, right? Yeah.
He just commented, he said it was in storage the whole time. So I don't know, like, the regulator could have got something maybe,
So it ran great. He put it in storage. Now, hey. Yeah, good point. Most likely, my guess would be, and we haven't brought this one up for a while, is these vents on the regulators. zero governors, you'll see these little, and different ones have different looking vents, but they're all vented somehow. Let's see. Well, here's the one we sent. The other one I showed you was a piece of junk, but here's a good regulator. See the vent, the hole? What do you think would like to live there? Ants? You know, it's a funny thing about ants. I never knew this. Ants bury their dead. Did you? It's an amazing fact. And so what can happen is they find, especially if it's been in storage, they'll find a hole like that and start packing their dead in there. And so I'm not saying that's exactly what it is, but if the regulator can't function, if these ports are plugged off, I can't show you. I can't show you with the top of my head. I would really be concerned about the vents on that thing, that you don't have something that built a nest in there. Just make sure they're open. I'd like to hear back on that one. See what you found out. Don't scratch at the microphone. Is that good? Yes. All right.
All right, let's go over to YouTube.
Hey.
Jim says, can you talk about possible damage that can happen from increased combustion temperatures from natural gas versus regular gasoline?
Increased combustion temperatures. I don't know of any increased combustion temperatures. You know, it's I was telling somebody that today. It's like people say you'll lose power on natural gas because it's lower in BTU, yet they'll also talk about increased combustion temperatures from a lower BTU fuel. I don't understand. Time answers all questions. If someone calls you a liar, the only way to prove it is over time. And so 20 years, you've never told a lie. No one's ever called. How could you be considered to be someone who lies? So we don't have an issue with combustion temperatures increasing with alternative fuels. It does not cause any issues. And so it's interesting. You think if it was an issue, we would have to have all kinds of data because you'd want to disprove it. But because it's just not an issue, we don't even bother with it because it's just such a non-issue. We show that propane generator all the time, the Yamaha we have in the showroom with the 6,700 hours on it. I mean, it's just, how could a higher, if alternative fuels was going to cause a higher temperature that's going to damage a motor, how can you get 6,700? There it is. I love that picture. 6,753 hours on propane and still have a perfectly fine motor. It's just this poor little generator. They beat the snot out of it. I can't remember if that's the one that rolled it down the hill or what, but that one I personally bought way back in 2000, I think, from Yamaha Direct before I became a Yamaha dealer, and it was a demo they had, and so it was broken already on gasoline. I put it on propane and put that engine meter on there back in the year 2000 for my own Y2K, and so it must have been 99, I guess. But anyway, it's just, so I don't know if you've heard that it's going to cause you issues or something, but it's just not an issue. But you know what's funny is, can I talk about? Nah, better not. Well, let me just say, we were a dealer for a major national generator manufacturer, and one time they audited all our warranty claims. And we'd been a dealer for, at that time, 15 years. I say 12 to 15 years. And suddenly they became concerned that alternative fuels could be costing them money because, you know, we did so many of them. And their audit turned up zero. Zero engine claims with our units. So my question was, hey, I'd like to see your data on your gasoline. You know, any dealers that, you know, sell just the gasoline units, they wouldn't give it to me. So, you know, obviously if it was, oh no, we don't have any with them, that would have been an easy response, but it was like, no, we can't share that with you. So it was obvious that they had quite a bit of issues on the gasoline side. So someone's going to say he's dodging the question. He has no idea what he's talking about. All I can tell you is time. We've been doing this since '95, no issues. So it's just not an issue. I would say move on to something else.
Okay.
Not being smart. I mean, I'm really serious. It's just not an issue.
So this is from Larry. Larry says he's running 2 Honda 2000s for backup power off of house propane. I was led to believe that I probably won't run on a single half-inch line on a single half-inch gas line run to their location. Wondering if I could build a coil of larger line at that spot to make up for the small size line.
All right, Larry, I hope you're live. Is that half-inch copper tubing? What is that? Let's get the book out.
He's running on propane.
He's running propane. He's running a half-inch line. How far?
He doesn't say.
He's got two 2000s. They probably won't run on a single half-inch gas line. Run to their location. Well, let me get the chart out. If you had single-stage propane and you're running half-inch copper tubing, the chart says you could run. Boy, I'm blind as a bat. Was it 92,000 BTU at 10 feet? I'd like to know what is he answering. Is it like half-inch copper or what is it? Good. All right. You're going to run a line, let's say 50 feet. All right. So, and then hook up to something. Let's say it's a generator. And let's say that's going to be a silver, gray, or green regulator, 11 inches water column. You simply replace that with a little 10 PSI regulator. And then usually you can just move that regulator to here. And now you're running 10 PSI all that way. And that's what I was saying. Then you could run, 30 generators off of that if you make that line high pressure. And I say high pressure, 10 PSI being average high pressure. So that's the least expensive way of doing that, instead of trying to go with bigger line size. And so if you haven't actually installed any line yet and you did high pressure, you can go down to 3/8, especially like if you're doing copper tubing. In a lot of areas, you're allowed to bury copper tubing. You have to check your local requirements, but if you go 2 foot deep, you can bury copper tubing. And usually you can buy the plastic coated copper tubing, which is kind of nice. And then you just run 10 pounds over there and you don't even worry about it. But I remember when I worked for the gas company, we had one of our technicians, he would install 400,000 BTU pool heaters with half-inch copper tubing at 11 inches water column. And they would burn. I mean, they'd burn, but they couldn't be putting out more than 40,000 BTU of heat, but they were blue. And he'd argue all day long, oh, it works great, you don't need all that. And but I guess my point is real world, sometimes things do actually work that the charts say they won't. But a little more information on that, we can answer that exactly and tell you specifically. But chances, I mean, off the record, you know, me personally, I don't think you'd have a bit of problem with half inch on 2,000 watt Hondas. Because I think they're only, what, 1,600? Aren't they only rated? Yeah, 1,600 watts anyway. So you're talking 3,200 watts total anyway, so shouldn't be an issue. But, you know, if without the exact data, I cannot, you know, guarantee anything for you. But personal opinion, yes.
Okay, Doc, we got several questions about proper tank purging procedures. Could you just talk about proper tank purging? There's questions about 100-pound cylinders. There's questions about barbecue grill cylinders. So maybe you could just talk about it in general.
Okay. I mentioned before, if you can get your hand on one of these in English, because I know it's backwards to you folks at home. This little Rigo book, it's a serviceman's manual, and it's got a lot of really interesting information. But let me tell you what it says about purging, and give you some ideas. And it tells you the importance of purging and how both water and so forth. And blind is bad out here. There's no lighting. Let me get close to you here. A rule of thumb for neutralizing moisture is important. I can't read it. I don't have my glasses. If never purge with liquid. Well, that's a biggie. When I was in the gas industry way back, we would purge grill bottles, 20-pounders, by flashing. You'd flash some liquid into the tank and bleed it off and call that being purged. But let's see what they say here. Now here's the actual purging. There is a device. You see that? Let me see if I can get it in there. There you go. I know everything's backwards, but you can see there's a proper valve for that. And what is it? Oh, he's going to take a picture of it. He's losing part of my paper. All right. So it says install an unloading adapter on the double check filler. You install the gauge, yada yada, POL, attach it, open the valve on the outlet of the vapor equalizing hose. And this is talking about the really big tanks. And it says, I can't read it. Maybe you can get it up on the screen to read it. I don't have my glasses. I think it is 30 pounds. I always thought that was the actual number, but you would pressurize it with vapor, and when 30, oh, is that 15? Man, I'm terribly sorry. Okay, 15 psi, shut off the vapor valve, and then switch the lever on the unloading valve to open the double check and get rid of the pressure, and then close the unloading valve, do it again, all right? And repeat steps 4 more times. Total required time is 15 minutes or less. So you pressurize it. They're saying 15 pounds. You pressurize it with vapor pressure, bleed it off. 15 pounds, bleed it off. 15 pounds, bleed it off. And you do a total of 5 times. And that's why if you do it 5 times, it says by that time 96% it should be down to throw an old grill cylinder on it and off she'd run. So it's an actual fact. But still trying to get that on there, are you? Think you'll make it? Huh? No. He's trying to get the picture on there showing the unloading valve, but that's really for technicians to do. You have to be very careful with propane. Of course, it lays on the ground. It's heavier than air. It'll wait for you. It'll wait and wait and wait until it gets ignition. So yeah, I see you finally got the picture on there. So you'll see the unloading valve, and so that's called a cluster valve. You see that? All of that built together, that's one valve. It's called a cluster valve. That's an older type valve. You don't see many cluster valves anymore, but so yeah, you should burn off any of the. If anyone was going to do that on their own, they would have some type of torch, have it set up so you can burn it off. Because you can't just, if you try just burning the vapor as it comes out, it's hard to stay lit because it's just, it's too rich. And he said, wait a minute, it's too rich. I thought you were purging it because it wasn't rich enough, but it's too rich for open flame, but it's too lean for an engine. So the laws of physics drive you nuts. But
okay, Dr. Hugh, we got time for 2 more questions.
yes,
And
2 more.
So we've got, this is Larry, just writes in from Facebook. Facebook is using the U.S. carburation tachometer. He wants to know how close to the spark plug do you wrap the wire? My spark plug wire has a pull knob on the cap.
Well, we actually, a lot of times on ours, we'll slide the wire up in the cap, in the spark plug boot. We'll just slide the wire up in the boot and then wire tie it on there. They recommend, most of the manufacturers of these recommend wrapping them 5 times. Being close or far away from the spark plug, I've not seen that being an issue either way. Just not an issue. So as close to the spark plug as possible is probably not a bad idea, but but yeah, that's our trick. If you can do it, just slide the wire right up inside the boot, and does a real nice job.
All right, let's go to a couple more rapid fire questions here to get the episode closed out.
I know they're getting bored.
So this comes from Rex on YouTube. Rex says, "Can I use a garden hose as a temporary gas line since it's rated at 90 psi?"
You want to get me in trouble, Rex? Will it work? The only thing I can do, Rex, is tell you about the buddy of mine that I went to eat dinner at his house. He had beautiful wife, beautiful children. Walked around the backyard for something, and here I see his one of those cheap old green garden hoses. You know what I'm talking about, the Kinkers. Probably made by the Kink Manufacturing Corporation. Those are cheapy kiki. And he had a 100-pound cylinder that he went and filled himself. He was a frugal kind of guy, but he ran his whole system off of that 5/8 garden hose. And I went up and I said, gas can leak through the jacket on these things. You do realize that. And I went up, it was like kind of ugly. Still can feel it's kind of ugly. So yeah, the gas molecules can pass through that type of rubber. So his question was emergency though, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing about emergency. Hey, you got to do what you got to do in emergency. So the true answer is no, never do that. It's not approved for it. It's not rated for it. But my buddy did it for many, many years, and it worked just fine. Was that a proper way to answer that?
Legal department approving.
Yeah, thank you. I need like a.
Okay, here's 2 more rapid
Cannot
fire
confirm nor
questions.
deny that a garden hose will work.
Joe wants to know, is it necessary
I am not a crook. I am not a crook. Oh, go ahead. Joe wants to know.
Joe wants to know if it's necessary to choke the carburetor when starting on propane or natural gas.
Choking is not necessary on alternative fuel. That's actually can cause you trouble most of the time, almost always cause you trouble. Choking is cutting off the air stream to the engine, obviously. And so what's really cool about propane and natural gas, here's something I should mention. We used to give away, well, not give away, we used to include in our let me back way back. Y2K, our biggest selling kit, was a kit that had a vacuum lock-off built into the engine regulator, okay? So in the engine regulator itself was built in an additional little chamber with a port, and when it received a so-called, and forgive me for using the word vacuum, the chamber would collapse and allow the fuel to flow, all right? And so we used to include with our systems a device called a GOK, a GOK, Governor Override Kit. And it had a chain, a spring, and you could hook it to your throttle lever and hook it to the other side somewhere and pull the throttle to the idle position. Because, you know, all the carburetors, you know, even, let me verify, sometimes I get in trouble when I do this stuff, but if you notice right here, this still has an idle speed screw. See that idle speed screw? So what that does, when you turn that down, of course, it increases the idle speed. So right now it'd be going faster and faster. If this engine was running, it'd be going, I know I don't sound like an engine, but I just want to give you the feeling like you're there. But notice, even with that much mixture, the fly is barely open. So, but anyway, you could start an alternative fuel engine at that setting. And when you, like if it's electric start, you hit the button, boom, and start at idle. And I don't think I've promoted that enough on this show. That is one wonderful side benefit of alternative fuel is you do not need to start an engine at wide open throttle. Imagine starting your car with your foot to the floor. Would you do that to your car? Man, isn't that pitiful? That would be a terrible thing to do. So the choking is not necessary on alternative fuels. We do include a primer that give a little shot, psst, psst, and all the time. But you know, here's the thing. Go to any warehouse facility and see what they're running inside the building in the winter. They got all the doors shut because it's cold out, and they have 20, 30 forklifts running on propane. Isn't that amazing? But you know, you gotta appreciate, you know, legalities, liability. We can't tell you to do certain things, but you're never safe running an engine inside because you just don't know what can happen. But the answer is no. But yeah, it is amazing how you can run a forklift inside of a building with the doors and windows shut and not have an issue. One day we're gonna tell you how many candles a generator equals. And what I mean by that is the minimal amount of monoxide that alternative fuel puts out could be, my goal is to convert that to candle power and say, okay, it's like having 6 candles lit. You know, that's how much monoxide is put out. But we got a lot of that to come to. We're just now getting started with these programs. We have a lot of fun stuff and a lot of that those details to bring out to help you appreciate how safe, how clean this fuel is. And I hope you know, that's what everyone takes away from the show, is the fact that propane, natural gas, does not harm your machine. It helps your machine. It helps the environment. Unlike gasoline, which is a carcinogen, causes cancer. I mean, the list goes on and on. And usually after the show, I go, oh, I wish I had told him about this. Wish I told him about that. But
Man, it's a good
I ran out of stuff to say.
place to wrap up.
Yes, it is. It's best time to wrap up is when you got nothing to say. All right, folks. Thanks again for joining us for the Dr. Hugh Show, Carb Clinic. Again, we are slammed to the walls. We're trying to get. I think we're doing like 98% on our shipments. I mean, we're loading the UPS truck every night, man, filling every shelf, and trying to help out the best we can. So our hearts are with you folks down there. My mother was in the direct path herself, so almost everyone here has someone there that has been affected. And so
Also with Harvey people.
oh, Harvey, absolutely. In Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, yeah, all along the Gulf Coast, absolutely. So, I do want to conclude by saying it really does hurt personally doing this type of business. When we started U.S. Carburation, we were mostly forklifts and vehicles. We used to convert vehicles for Lockheed Martin, who built the space shuttle. We did that out of Atlanta, Georgia, and that was what we mainly focused on. Well, Y2K came along and people started asking about generators, and it basically took over our business. And so now we're, you know, generators, wood splitters, pressure washers, that's what we're into. And people say we take advantage of people in these kind of situations. If anybody really knew what we're about, is we are here to help people, and we stay late to try to help people. Our CSRs, they get upset if they can't answer the phone. I can tell some of the most negative issues you'll have working here is that they care so much that people aren't getting spoken to on the phone. They want to help them. They want to solve their problems, help get them going, whether it's new equipment or helping them get what they have going. So it really does, you know, kind of bum you out when you're trying to help people and people say you're taking advantage. And I told one gentleman, sir, that people are taking advantage of us. We've been there 25 years. Hurricane just came last week. So, but anyway, we're here for you. We'll do what we can.